And she says, sometimes I just wish it just could be like me and my parents and having dinner. And I said, honey, that's not your life. She says,
Nope.
she says, I know, I know. And then something will happen, something amazing will happen, and I say to her, this is why your parents do what they do. And she says, I know.
Yep, yep. That I mean, well, that's the story, and that's what the Rebbe set up, and we each do our best to try and live that mission. And to a certain degree, that creates the segue to this week's parsha, the Parshat Vayeitzei. This is the parsha where we see that somebody who was a yeshiva bacher, right, Yaakov Avinu, then the circumstances have that he must go out. Vayelech Charana, right? Vayeitzei Yaakov me'Beersheva. He has to officially leave the yeshiva, as it says, because up until that point, what was he doing? He was a Yoshev Ohel. He sat in the tent all day studying Torah. And now Vayelech Charana, and he has to go not only out there into the world, but he has to go to the deepest and darkest places, the places that give God a reason to be wrathful. That's why it's called Haran. Comes the Haron Af Shalmakom, is one of those places that raises God's ire, as it were. And why? Why does he have to leave? We know that obviously the circumstance has it that that he has stolen the blessings out from under the grasp of Esav. Esav is furious, and so he has to run away from Esav. But the truth is, like all things, that the physical or what seems to be the surface-like reason is just how it plays out. But obviously, there's a deeper reason for all things. That everything that occurs is as per God's choreography, and so if Yaakov Avinu is heading out from Be'ersheva and he's going to Haran, that is his purpose and his mission in life. Now, Yaakov does a few interesting things along his way. One of them is that he goes and actually doesn't make an immediate beeline straight to Haran, but he goes and he actually, whatever he was learning on his own, as it were, in the Be'er Sheva where he was growing up, says, if I'm already going to leave home, I first have to stop and learn in the out of town yeshiva, the real yeshiva, the one that is the yeshiva Shem Va'ever, the same one that taught my grandfather Avram, right? And he goes and he studies there for a long time, and only then does he embark on his journey. And as he's heading to Haran, he stops in a special place. It actually says that he doesn't stop there, but he encounters the place, right? It says Vayivka b'makom, that he the word of Vayivka apaga means to like kind of bang up against something, rather than Vayavo, that he arrived or that he was passing through. Vayivka means that he abruptly encounters this place. Hashem has the sun sets early, so that Yaakov spends the night here. Why? What is this place? Anybody know?
Har Hamoria?
This is Har Hamoria, right? And he says so later. He says, "Manora hamakom hazeh." How awesome, how wondrous is this place? Ein zeki im beis Elokim, right? V'zeh sha'ar shamayim. This is the house of God. Here is the gateway to heaven. Right, and we know that in this place, in this place, when he's going down for the night, he surrounds his head with stones, right? Why does he surround his head with stones?
Maybe there's a practical reason as well as a...
It was protection, wasn't it?
Right?
Yes. It says, Rashi says that he was afraid. Rashi cites in Talmud that he was afraid of the wild animals.
Right.
So he surrounds his head with stones. Now, anybody will tell you that Avram right away, I mean Yaakov would have failed right there his Boy Scouts training. Right? Why?
But having stones around your head is no protection.
Right. There's some vital organs that hang lower than your head. Right? Pretty sure that your liver and your heart and your intestines and all these things are also something that are quite important.
Yeah.
So when Yaakov is surrounding his head because he's afraid of the wild animals, he's not doing much to protect himself. Right? So there's a very famous answer that is a very important point, which indicates that when Yaakov Avinu is heading out to Haran, he understands that he is there for a purpose and a mission. What's the answer? Jerry, do you know this one? A beautiful, famous talk of the Rebbe about this. So the answer that the Rebbe gives is Yaakov is heading out to the wilderness, not just the physical wilderness. He's not actually really concerned about the physical animals out there in the world. He understands, he goes with divine protection, etc. He's concerned with the spiritual wild animals. He's concerned, he's going into this this place, this chaotic, rebellious, corrupt place. He had spent his whole life in a pristine and spiritually protected environment, and now he's heading out into the wilderness. And he's concerned. He's concerned about all the wild animals. So he has to protect himself against these wild animals, against all these corrupt and negative influences and those that would try to wage battle and overpower him and pull him down from his spiritual place. And so he has to protect himself. But this is important. To protect himself and surround himself entirely would be to do what?
Build a cover. Like
Well, it would be to totally cut himself off from the world. If he surrounded himself entirely with these stones.
Right, because if God is sending him there, then it's for a reason. He has to engage.
Correct. And too many people think that this is what is demanded, that if you end up finding yourself in this world, if your soul wakes up at the moment of your birth and says, where am I? What is this? This is such a horrible, terrible place, and I need to protect myself from it. So I'm going to immediately surround myself and cut myself off from this world as much as possible so that I maintain my spiritual integrity. Here comes Yaakov Avinu and he teaches you, that is not the correct way. Yes, you do need to protect your head. There's a part of you that needs to remain above the fray, that will remain clear-headed and resolute as to your purpose and to your mission and to your integrity with God. But in a sense, from the neck down, you need to be exposed and engaged with the world. You can't be cut off and separate from the world, because that would be denying the fact that you being here is part of your purpose and your mission. And you are meant to engage and meant to elevate. Every single person is doing a shlichut. Every single person is on a mission from God. Anywhere they are in the world. Some in a more manifest way, like again, you have Rabbi Tzvi Kogan in Abu Dhabi, and all the Chabad rabbis and rabbins that you know wherever they are, and every single one of us, wherever you find yourself, that actually has a particular purpose and a mission. And you have to employ the two-pronged strategy that Yaakov Avinu is modeling for us here. That on the one hand, you need to protect your head and make sure that your head, and i.e. your spiritual integrity, does not become immersed in this world. And simultaneously, you need to make sure that you are not fully and utterly cut off from this world, that in this world is your purpose and your mission. So to put it succinctly, You have an obligation to be in this world, but not of this world. To be here, to understand that you are here for a purpose. You are here for a reason. You don't exist here. You don't live here. But you're not that you don't live here, but you are to a certain degree passing through. Avram Avinu, what did he call himself? Even as he became a father of nations, and he became, as everybody knew, that the eventual master of this particular land, the land of Canaan. Still, he never asserted his authority, and to a certain degree, really never asserted his permanence. What did he call himself wherever he traveled? He called himself Avram Ha'ivri. The word Ivri means the one who is Ma'avar, is Over, the one who's passing through. I am Avraham the nomad. To making the point that I'm here, wherever I am, I'm here for a reason. I've traveled here. But I am not, this is not my place. This is my mission. And each and every one of us understands that our soul is not is not a denizen of this world. And so therefore the head, that is the main the main center of the soul's expression, that needs to be protected. But the rest of the body, the part that of you that can engage and interface with the world, you must do so. Because the world is counting on us, is relying on us to elevate with our mitzvot, with our Torah and our mitzvot. And so this is something that we have to, in a sense, maintain this duality in our own lives. How do you do this? How does each and every one of us go about it? In other words, just like Yaakov Avinu, and this is important, because even if you know this idea, this philosophical point, you have to realize that Yaakov Avinu also knew and understood this point before he ever set out to put those stones around his head. Right? He was very well aware of the necessity to protect his head while allowing his body to engage in the world. That's why he went about doing it. But that did not suffice. Rather, he actually implemented a practical strategy, put these stones around his head. It wasn't good enough to know something. He did something about it. So what do we do? How do we each, in a sense, knowing that the truth of this, knowing that we have to protect our head, but keep our body engaged, what is our practical strategy in this regard? And the answer is that there must be the pillars of your faith and your spirituality that are unmoving, that remain preserved and maintained, no matter where you end up finding yourself in the world, no matter what circumstance, no matter what else is on your schedule. And those would be certain standards that keep you and remind you as to your identity, if it is, and as strongly would encourage, is that you maintain a schedule of Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah. All three are Torah, Tefillah, and mitzvos, basically. Where you have firmly affixed in your schedule that do not waver, that remain protected and uncorruptible, and what is the expression I'm looking for? Uncompromisable. Times of Torah study in your schedule, times of davening, and the mitzvahs that you do. And that, in a sense, maintains the executive function focused on your mission orientation. You say you understand that I am here, that even as I exist in the space, and I have to make sure I put food on the table, and I keep up relationships with people, and I do give myself the time to indulge and appreciate what this world has to offer. But who am I? I'm not a citizen of Bethesda. I'm not a citizen of Potomac. I'm not a citizen of California. I am a Jew. And I remind myself of this, or this point remains clear by me, because these Jewish things that I do not compromise on. No matter what the world may say, no matter what my schedule might try to do to push, whatever it is, this is untouchable. I've placed the stones around this. I've protected this. This is protected territory. And that is key. That is key, because even if philosophically you have this the sense of yeah, I'm Jewish, of course. If you ask me, of course I'll say it. No, it needs to be tangible. Just like Yaakov Avinu, of course he understood it, but he put rocks around his head to make that point tangibly to himself. And each and every one of us must do the same. We need to have those touchstones, those firmly affixed, unmoving protections that tell us that no matter what happens and no matter what else changes in my life, this does not change. This does not move, and this does not get at all tampered with. And that is why Yaakov Avinu is able to then go and spend what up until that point is the majority of his life in Haran, among Lavan, and then on his way traveling back, and he said 20 years he was by Lavan, 20 years, and he managed in this most corrupt place, under the in the household of the most corrupt individual. Yaakov establishes a household there in Haran. He doesn't build the household in the land of Canaan. He doesn't build it under the wing of his father. He builds it out there in Haran. 4 wives, 12 or 11 sons. Number 12 will come on his way home, but 11 sons, and at least one daughter, although there is understanding that each one of the tribes also had a twin sister. But that's a different discussion for a different time. But he has all this family, and they're all brought up. He builds his household in Haran, and yet, remarkably, it is not a reflection of Haran; it's a reflection of Yaakov. Indeed, a promise that the Rebbe kind of made to his shluchim, that you'll move out to Bethesda, to California, to Las Vegas, to Paris, France, to Dubai, to wherever it is. And we'll come back 20 years later, and we won't see a Dubai citizen. We won't see a Bethesdan, a typical Bethesdan. We will see a Jew who looks like he just came straight out of Brooklyn, or Yerushalayim. Why? Because we make sure to put those barriers, that every single Chabad Chassid knows that as much as they are engaged in their shlichut, in their outreach work, or whatever it is, that they also need to take time to bolster their own spiritual soul, davening and learning, and spending time and learning with their children, etc. And there, even if it's not the majority of the time, the head is percentage-wise, is a very small part of the body. And that's okay. And that's actually the way it should be. The vast majority of you is extended out there to fulfill your mission. But that most crucial part of you, that stays enshrined and up is where you maintain your standard, and you can have 90-something% of your body submerged underwater. And as long as your head stays above the waves, you're totally fine. You are totally fine.
Of course, you're talking about there is one exception, and that's that for us, not necessarily for you, but I suspect for you also, one thing that does change of those three is mitzvah. And the amount of mitzvot that we do, the strength with which we perform those mitzvot, that's a changing thing. That for some of us, that's a very evolving thing.
Well, God willing, we should see for everybody, including for those Chabad, wherever they are, that there wouldn't be a diminishing, there would only be a growing in it. And what I mean about the mitzvahs not becoming affected, not changed, is that the common denominator, the thrust of the doing of the mitzvahs doesn't change. That not the necessarily the specifics or the time allotted to the mitzvahs, but that commitment to mitzvah should not change. Or if it's or to your point more, if it does change, it grows. Right? We should only grow in that.
Right.
And by the way, we'll see in next week's parsha that Yaakov Avinu was very cognizant of this effort, and to a certain degree was very aware of his accomplishment in not allowing Haran to change him, and being in Lavan's household to change him, because Yaakov Avinu says when he is about to encounter Esau, and he sends off the messengers / angels to entreat with Esau, or at least to feel him out. The very first words he tells the angels to say, he says, "So says your brother Yaakov." And what are the first words he said that they should say? Im Lavan Garti. Right? I have lived with Lavan. Now, interestingly enough, that the word Garti, rather than in Lavan Yashafti, indicates two things. Number one, Garti, from the Hebrew word ger, right? A convert, which is, and in this case, it means to say that this was not my place. The word Garti means a temporary dwelling, versus Yashafti, which means I settled. I did not settle. Even for the 20 years, I did not settle. I never became a member of Lavan's household. I always maintained that distance. So just the choice of word itself indicates that Yaakov never forgot who he was and never forgot his role in Haran and in the household of Lavan. But also, Garti, take the letters of Garti and what are and the numerical value of the word Garti, and what do you have?
3 and I don't know what.
So Garti is the same letters as Taryag. Anybody's heard of that acronym before?
Taryag mitzvot.
Exactly. Taryag is the way in Hebrew that you count to 613. Because the biggest number of alphanumeric is the Tuf, which is 400. So that's the Tuf plus another 200, which is the Resh, Tar, and then you want to get to 13. Yud is 10, and Gimel is 3. Taryag is how you say the 613 mitzvot. And Garti is that, so that, as Rashi says, in love and Garti, there's Taryag mitzvah shamarti. That I was with Lavan, but I did not compromise on a single mitzvah. I maintained my standards throughout the 20 years of living with Lavan. And he's telling this to Esav, because he wants Esav to be aware of the spiritual firepower, as it were, that Yaakov has as his resources. It says, you may be physically stronger and you may be coming with a significantly stronger army, but just be aware that I am coming, having maintained my spiritual integrity for 20 years in the most corrupt place in the world. I command angels. And you may want to think twice before you go up against this. So he's telling Esav this, number one, as kind of trying to head off any confrontation by making it clear to Esav that this is not going to be an easy battle for you if you choose to take this, to try and intimidate Esav away from from having the confrontation. But secondly, he's turning to Esav and he says, listen, Mashiach will result, the coming of Mashiach will happen when Yaakov, right, where Yaakov will, where the kin of Yaakov will influence the kin of Esav, or conquer the kin of Esav. More importantly, what this simply means is that Yitzchak's two progeny, Yaakov and Esav will both be where they need to be spiritually, where Yaakov is teaching Esav and Esav is learning and is maintaining his spiritual integrity. And so Yaakov is turning to Esav and says, I've done my part. Where are you holding? And that's when they come back and they say, the angel's coming back and say, unfortunately, we came to your brother, but he's Esav. He's not where he needs to be spiritually. And so no, this isn't the happily ever after moment. There's going to be some manner of confrontation here, and that will continue through history until finally Esav is properly subjugated towards holiness. But he's not there. But Yaakov was saying to Esav, he was saying, here's my status update. In Haran, I managed to a certain degree, kind of what Paula just mentioned, not only maintain, but actually grow in my spiritual state. What about you? So we see that ultimately Yaakov Avinu understood that this was the primary reason that he was going down to Haran, was that this was part of his divine journey, and as such, he could not get lost there. He had to maintain who he was. And ultimately, we call ourselves, the Jewish people, we call ourselves Bnei Yisrael from the name, from Yaakov specifically. Why? Because this is who we are. We are the same in that we have been found in every corner of the world. We've been to every version of Haran that exists, from Persia to Greece to Babylonia to Rome to Europe to the United States to the Pale Settlement, to wherever it is that we have ended up in whichever version of Haran. The common denominator has always been that while all other empires have assimilated and disappeared, Klal Yisrael, Am Yisrael, never let their heads go beneath the water, never stop protecting their heads, never stop being aware of who they are and what they are meant to be and what they are meant to maintain.
I
And
thought
here
we
we
were
are.
called Yisrael because we continue to struggle with Hashem.
That's there are many reasons why we're called Yisrael, but we're also called Beit Yaakov.
Okay.
And but the thing is, why do we attribute ourselves mostly to Yaakov when we call ourselves Bnei Yitzchak? Why do we call ourselves Bnei Avram? But why the reference to Yaakov or to Israel? And yes, Israel not only struggles with Hashem, but that's one meaning of the word Yisrael. The other one is Sar Kel, the Prince of God. And that is the idea right now, that we will remember and we maintain our royalty, as it were, and not just so we can pat ourselves on the back and feel entitled to whatever it is, but because we understand that if we are here as the representative of God in this particular place, to bring, in a sense, and to influence and to project God's dominion over everything, to remind the world who is in fact the king and the creator. And we can only do that if that is clear to ourselves. And so we are here to be influencers, not to be influenced. We are here to be a light unto nations, and not allow the nations to extinguish our light. We are here to be, wherever we are, to be Yidden, to be the Jewish people. Sure, we could be American, and proud Americans, as we were, proud patriots in all the countries that were willing to have us. But, right, as the famous conversation went between Golda Meir and Henry Kissinger, right, that when she came to Henry Kissinger, and Henry Kissinger got the sense that she was going to try to pull the Jew card, right, from one, in terms of gaining favor for Israel from the Nixon administration. And Henry Kissinger said to head her off, it says, Mrs. Prime Minister, please understand that I am an American first, and only then I'm a Jew. Which she responded, "That's okay, because in Hebrew we read from right to left, and so we are always Jews first, because that is our loyalty, our legacy, our identity is that more than anything else. In fact, it's that alone. Period. We are Americans because that's where we live, and that's the country from which we derive our kind of the benefit and protections for our bodies, etc. But that doesn't define who we are. It does not define who we are. What defines who we are? Our Yiddishkeit. We are Jews. We were Jews in Spain. We were Jews in America. We are Jews in Greece or in Rome, etc. This is Am Yisrael, and that is those stones that we put around our head, and then we can march into into Haran, and that is why, if you think about it, it's a very interesting end. After Yaakov, he says Yaakov puts this down, surrounds his head, but he's unsure. He's unsure, is he doing the right thing, right? Because he has not yet gone on. He doesn't know if he will be successful. He doesn't know if God will protect him, right? And so that's when he has this dream, the dream that reassures him. He sees the angels going up the ladder, the angels that escorted him all throughout Israel. And he was so concerned that he knew that there was this divine protection while he was in the Holy Land. But now that he was going to leave the Holy Land, he was going to go to Haran Af Shalmakom, he's going to go to this corrupt place, whether there would continue to be divine protection. And so that's why in his dreams, he saw the angels going back up, the angels from Israel. But then he saw the changing of the guard, and new angels were coming down to escort him as he went out into Haran. And so this was very reassuring to him. And that's what God said to him. Don't worry, I am with you. And I will protect you. And anywhere you go, I will guard you everywhere you go. And v'hashivoticha. And because ultimately Haran and all these places are not your place, I will return. At which point, Yaakov Avinu says, when he wakes up, and he first speaks with awe about the place that he just was, he then says, God, if you in fact will protect me, Vishavti b'shalom el veit avi, and you will bring me back in peace to this place, to the house of my father. He says that to Evan Hazot, this stone will become a monument to you. Now, all things considered, if I'm God, I would be a little miffed.
Yes.
If I would protect you for 20 years, you're going to give me a rock? Right?
Not for that.
Right? It's like, that's, heaven as house, I will give you this rock. Right? What's he saying?
But the rock is not his to give. It's God's rock.
Right. So I'm being a little facetious. It doesn't say that he's going to give it to God, but he says, I will establish this as a monument.
Right.
Asher samti matzeva, right? That I will place this as a monument. Because what it will be is a monument to this approach. That this is correct. It will become a monument for all future of my kids to follow. What is a monument?
Wait a minute. It's all right to make a bargain with God. If you do this, I'll do that. This is what do you say?
No, I am not saying he's making a bargain with God. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying if this God, I'm learning from this. If it turns out that and I will return safely, then I will make sure my kids will learn to do the same. If, in other words, if this is successful, then I will make sure, God, that it won't just be with me, but I will erect this as a monument for all my future kin to follow this approach, this path, to do as I have done. God, I am embarking, I'm striking out on this journey, a journey that nobody has yet heretofore taken. Going out into the place of Haran, right? with the idea that I will engage the world while yet trying to maintain my integrity and keep my head above the water. God, if in fact this turns out to be successful and I have earned your protection and I will return in peace, then God, you can count on me in that I will erect this as a monument for all my kin to learn and for them to follow. They will all do what I said here to do. They will become Bnei Yisrael for all eternity. Because they will follow this, I will make sure. That's the point.
Is it? I'm sorry, I must be a little stuck, but suppose Hashem hadn't fulfilled what Yaakov was hoping Hashem would fulfill. Isn't Yaakov's responsibility the same about teaching his children, about
No, but he would have to
honoring?
teach them a different way because clearly that was not the right way. If it was not successful, what he's simply saying, he's not making a bargain with Hashem as much as he's saying, God, if it turns out that I was correct in this approach, then you can rely on me to teach this approach to my kids. If this results in the success of this effort to exist in a place to fulfill my mission and to return safely home, then I, God, commit to you that I will teach my children to do just as to stay on mission and on point and follow this approach. Because basically what happens is very oftentimes somebody could say, okay, you know what, if I will do this and I will make this and I'll be successful, and that's the end of my responsibility. For example, Noah, right? Noah did the whole thing in the flood, whatever it was, and he did what God asked, and he was successful in it, and he played his role. But did he erect any monument to teach his children? Was he that concerned whether his children would follow in his footsteps and do what they are meant to do? In his lifetime, the entire world, which were all his kin, became basically pagan and idol worshippers. And what did he do about it?
Garnished.
Nothing. Garnish. And Yaakov is saying, God, if this turns out to be the right way to fulfill your mission of this protecting of the head, but keeping the rest of myself exposed, then God, I will make sure that all my future kin learn this approach. And that they too follow this, in which they will exist in this world, but they will not be of this world. And that will become our legacy. And that will be what it means to be Bnei Yisrael. So it's not so much and look what he says. The Chol Asher Titnli. So he says basically 90% engage with the world, 10% consecrated onto God. Right?
Yeah.
What are the words after he says about this? I will erect this matzeva, this monument. What does it say? The Chol Asher Titnli, and anything that God, any resource, God, that you will give to me, 90% invested in the world and 10% to you. 10% entirely given, focused on you, while 90% is kind of reinvested in the nature of this world. 90% engaged in the world in kind of a typical mundane practical way. 10% always God consecrated to you. Really, even the 90% ultimate purpose is you and your mission, God. But that will be achieved kind of through the pathways of this world. But in order that the 90% stays with that focus, 10% has to immediately, straight off the top, to you, God. A reminder that all this is ultimately about you and for you. So 10% is entirely to you so that the 90% is also about you.
There's something in the text about that?
Yeah, no, that's the exact quote in the Torah.
So that's where tithing comes from?
Mm-hmm. V'chol asher titein li aser asrenu lach. At the end of
Wow.
that statement of Yaakov, that when he says of the Shafti v'Shalom, the very last part of that statement is, and anything, God, that you will give me, I will maintain that same approach. 10% straight to you, 90% invested in this world, with the ultimate goal of using it to engage and refine the world. And the way that I will remember that 90% is with that purpose, meaning my engagement with the world is about meaning, is because the first 10% is automatically to you. I start my day, 10% of my day will be focused entirely on God, davening, learning, whatever. The rest of the 90% is still about you, but it's only about you. I keep it by, the way I will remember that it's about you is because that 10% that is totally about you. This is our strategy. This is our approach. Yaakov models it for us, and we, to our credit, 3,500 years later, have not deviated. So Paula, it's less so much that he is bargaining with Hashem and saying that if Hashem, you hold up your end of the deal, then I will give you a goodie bag. But more importantly, Hashem, if this proves to be successful, and in this I am understanding our partnership correctly, and my mission correctly, and I return in peace. And what does peace mean? Not just that I return safe and sound. Peace means shalom, and I return
Completeness.
completed. Right? If I return with mission accomplished, then I will then make sure to erect this monument, to make sure that everybody who that I can influence will be influenced by this message, by this point, by this approach, and they too will apply this 10% to define the other 90% approach.
Is there a relationship between this matzeva and machanaim?
That you're saying the one that he erects on the way back, or
Right,
the camp that
exactly.
he sees?
Bingo. Your son says I shouldn't use that word anymore. I'm sorry.
Who's that?
Yesela says, why do you always say bingo?
He doesn't know that game.
Anyway.
No, so the answer is I'm sure, because everything is connected, and whatever it is, I can't say that I've personally seen anything in the texts about that. But again, it doesn't mean that it's not. It just means that my limited knowledge on the matter doesn't directly make a connection. But I'm sure there is idea that these are the two places where he establishes. I guess the simple answer to it is, why does he call it machanaim, which means plural camp, like camps, but machanaim means the double camp, right? Whenever you have the ayim sound at the end, like pa'am, pa'amayim, sha'a, sha'atayim, it means doubled. So the double camp, machane elokim zeh, he says that this is the campment of God, so he calls it machanayim. What do you mean, why machanayim? You just said it's the camp of God, so call it the machane elokim. Why machanayim? Why the doubled camp? Why the kind of the double layered camp? Because he was saying that in this I see again kind of that duality that we've been talking about. That in each place, that on the one hand this is the domain of man, and on the other hand it is the domain of God. Is it supposed to be one or the other? No, it's actually not, because God could have made this world the God show, right, where He does everything, and everything is immediately are naturally subservient to Him, etc. Without, no, He asks us to make it happen. This is the domain of man, as it is also the domain of God. So to a certain degree, upon the completion of his success, he's able then to declare about the space around him that it is this machanayim. It is a place that firmly speaks to that dual aspect a place of God and a place of man. The dominion of God and the dominion of man, the Shema Yisrael and the Baruch Shem. So I don't know if that maybe is again, and that is purely kind of my own conjecture. So I can't say that I saw that anywhere, but that might be a thought on the matter.
When you use the word shlemut, this is what prompted the question. On the one hand, the first matzeva is on the way. The second one is coming back. There's a circle that's just been completed of sorts. That's why I asked the question.
Right. But notice it's also, this happens to be a terminology that he uses also later when he says, right, and then he feels is afraid to confront Yaakov, right? I mean, Esav. He turns to God and he says, God, I only came with a mission, with a stick, with a walking stick, with in a sense the mission orders. And now I am lishnei machanot, to two camps, right? That could be either a reference to the physical amount of abundance that he has that it doesn't all fit into one camp, or it could be, as we've been saying, the machane of Elokim and the machane of Bnei Adam, that I've managed to achieve in both. I've established the domain of man along with the domain of God, and so hence machanaim. So the mission, the mission original, the mission orders he goes out with, and he comes back with the success of the mission, having turned it into the two machanot, and the dominion of God and the dominion of man. And that's again what he is meant to achieve. All right, everybody.
Thank you,
We'll have
Rabbi.
to-
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Yeah.
Shabbat shalom. Keep
Shabbat
warm.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Keep warm, you guys.
Yeah,
Yes,
really.
yes. It
Thanks.
is.
You're
Yeah,
lucky.
rub it in. Rub it in.
No, we're cold. It's
Better
cold.
have it.
No, it's cold here. It's cold.
It's not
Yeah,
as
there's
cold
cold
as
and there's
it is
cold.
here.
All right.
Right. You're right. It's
All
freezing.
right. Yes, yes.
And
All right, I'm going to
windy.
jump off.
Be well.
Everybody. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.